Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below for Harmonies or any other game. Hello my friends, today we're going to be building trees and mountains and rivers and all of this in front of us, trying to make things be in harmony. Today we're taking a look at Harmonies. This is sort of a tiled drafting, laying, tableau building game. It's been getting a lot of buzz online, a lot of hype, a lot of people highly rating it, and so I want to show you how the game works, and then I'm going to say what I like, what I don't like, and I'm going to compare it to some other games and tell you, is it worth the hype that it's getting? Let's take a look. Now Harmonies comes with some nice wooden pieces that are screen printed on both sides. It comes with cards that has some nice artwork. Over the course of the game, you're going to be building on your own board certain patterns like these three rivers with sort of a wheat field there. And you're going to be trying to score points as many times as you can do this. Now this is what your board might look like at the end of the game. Now what you're trying to do is gain the most points. There's many ways to get points through standard ways that will be the same every game. Like here, we have a little tree and it's on a level 1, so this is worth 1 point, where this one is on a little bit of bark below it. And so that one's gonna be worth 3 points. But if you had like 2 barks in a tree and a leaf, then it's 7 points. Mountains need to be next to each other. Like these ones are all next to each other, so they're good for scoring, and the higher it is, the more points you'll get. The fields, you wanna have at least 2. If you have more than 2, it's still going to just be 5 points, but this one alone doesn't do anything. Buildings want different types of colors surrounding it by looking top down. And so if they have 3 or more different colors, you'll get 5 points. 2 or less, they'll get nothing. Then you have the river. You look at the shortest length of the river here, and you're going to get a certain amount of points depending on how long that river is. Now this scoring happens the same way each game, but you'll notice that there's some cubes on here, because you'll be drafting these scoring cards over the course of the game, and like this one needs to have a sort of field next to the river, and like this, here's 3 like that, and then there's the field, so that cube came from this card, where it happens again here. So you can use the same types of pieces to help you get things like that, and so this one's going to score 12 points because both cubes are removed. Now these ones have different things, like as you can see, different requirements that are needed, and when you do, you put the cube on the one that's there from the card. So this one we only got 1 cube off, so it's 5 points versus 11. This one we got 2 of the 3, so it's 10 points. If we had gotten the third, it'd be 17. This one we got 1 cube, it's 4. So you're also gonna be drafting these cards as you're building it. So set scoring and variable scoring that's gonna happen each game. Whoever has the most points is the winner. How do you go about doing this? Well, there is a board, and each of these will have 3 tokens on there, and you're just going to take those 3 and place those 3 anywhere you want. They don't have to be adjacent, but there is a little bit of a diagram here where, you know, like the mountains, they can stack on themselves, or they can be on the bottom. The buildings, you can be on the bottom, but they can also stack on mountains, on buildings, or on the brown wood. Wood can be by itself, but it can also stack. Leaves can be on themselves, or they can stack on the wood, and then the fields are there by themselves. This is the hardest part of the game. I really wish they would have put this on like a player aid, because it's how you're stacking things, but essentially you're drawing 3 tokens and you're placing them. Again, you can place them anywhere that's legal, and you cannot place them on any of the cubes, and once the cubes are there, you can't move them either. Now optionally, you can take one of the cards in the display, and again, you're looking at these, seeing what the requirements are, and seeing which ones you think you might be able to make based upon the tokens you took now, what you've already started to build, and things like that. And once you take one of these cards, you fill it up with the tokens. And again, once per turn, or anytime during your turn, if you fulfill this, you could take a token from here, placing it, getting you points at the end of the game. There's 2 advanced variants for the game. There's a backside of the board, and it works. Everything scores the same except rivers. Rivers is you're trying to make different islands. Like here's 4 different sections of islands, and the more of those you get, the more points you get, as opposed to having one big long river. There's also these animal spirit cards you can add. You get dealt 2 of these at the beginning, and you keep 1, and you place it in above your board. You can only have 4 total cards over your board at any time. This is one of those. And the interesting thing is, once you do this, like let's say you do this, and you put the cube from here on your board here, what this does is unlock some specific scoring that's only for you. So any single field is now 2, any double field next to each other is 2, but if you have 3 or more, now it's 10. So if you get this up there, you're gonna be focusing on this. Where if you get this one, you're gonna be focusing on the water. If you get this, you're gonna be focusing sort of on building the trees and such. So it gives you a little bit more focus on what to work with. Now the game ends when the bag of tokens runs out, or when any player has 2 or less spots, and play the end of the round and add up all those points. Whoever's the most is the winner. All right, so first I'm gonna tell you what I like, and then I'm gonna tell you what I didn't like as much, and then I'm gonna sort of compare it to a couple other games, and then I'm gonna tell you, is the hype worthy? Is it, this game has been getting, if you don't know, this game It's just barely being released over here in North America. It looked like it was released maybe a month ago in Europe. It's getting a ton of buzz online because, well, I mean, at this point, it's got over close to 1,000 ratings, and the average rating is 8.3, which is very high, especially for a smaller, shorter, smaller weight and a shorter game. Those games typically don't go as high as some of the bigger, heavier ones. It's just the way it works on Board Game Geek for some reason. So this game has already got an uphill battle because it's shorter and lighter, but it's getting a lot of ratings quickly and a lot of really good ratings, and it's flown up to the number 2 as of right now. We're recording this video today on the Board Game Geek Hotness, which is huge. And so I'm going to try to put that in perspective towards the end of this video. But first, let me tell you about what I liked about it. So first of all, great art on the cards. The game, it does look beautiful. I just love the way it looks. The art looks awesome. The tokens themselves that you're putting on, the little wooden pieces, I like that they're screen printed on both sides. They're double-sided, so good production there. This game definitely has some simple mechanisms, but lots to consider. I mean, on your turn, you're taking a stall of tokens, 3 of them, and you're placing them on your board. That's it. But there is a lot to consider. There's a lot of things of, hey, where am I going to place these? What am I going to do? Am I building the big river? Am I going to build some buildings? Am I going to build some mountains? Am I going to stack the mountains? Am I going to make clumps of fields and things like that? There's a lot to consider. There's also a little bit of some building rules that you have to keep track of, which bloats it a little bit. It could be a little bit more streamlined, but there is definitely pretty simple thing. And then optionally take a card, right? And maybe place a cube from one of those cards on something that you've finished. So it's pretty easy. Take some tiles, put them on your board. Maybe take a card, maybe score a card. That's it. I like that there's multiple ways. There's sort of set ways to score. And again, that's like all the different types score different ways. The trees score different. The taller the tree, the more points. The taller the mountain, the more points, but they have to be adjacent. The fields need to be next to another field, but any more doesn't really get to any more. And you want to sort of clump little fields all over the place. The river, you want a big long one snaking through. The buildings, you want different colors surrounding it, things like that. So I like that there's set ways to score that you can count on every game. But on top of that, there's the variability of the cards that you're trying to score, and that's going to sort of change every game, right? So you have things that you can count on, things that will feel familiar to you from game to game, but then you'll have different strategies because different tokens, different types of things are going to come out at different times. Every game is going to feel different because it's sort of variable. And as you take those things, you're going to be working on different cards. You'll be taking them maybe first, then trying to find a card that matches it, or even better, you'll find a card that matches something to start with there, and it kind of puts you down a different strategy. So I like this because each game you're going to have some different strategies and such of things that you're going for, but you also can fall back on if the cards aren't coming out that you need or the tokens aren't really coming out what you need. For some of those cards, well, you can always fall back on the set ways to score, which will be very familiar for you. So I like that there's sort of that push and pull there. I like that you're working on things, multiple things simultaneously. So you place a token, you know what, hey, this is going to be good for this card, it's going to be good for this card. Or sometimes you're using the same token for multiple patterns in cards. As long as it doesn't get a little cube on it, you can, each thing will have one cube, but like you can use it for multiple things. I think that's nice. It allows you to really sort of combo some things together. I like that you can sort of change the end game where like if you see someone's clumping a bunch of things in the middle and taking their time and building up a lot, but maybe you've scored more and maybe you've scored a bunch more cards, you think you're in the lead, you can sort of rush the ending by putting everything on the bottom level because if one player has 2 or less spaces, the game ends. So you can sort of play with the timing of the ending. So overall, I enjoyed the game. On the negative side of things, the ending can be a little abrupt. Usually with family games like this, you play till something happens and then you finish that round and then there's one more round. This one ends at the end of that round. So if you're the last player of the game or of a turn and you get to the point where you're like, hey, you got 2 or less spaces, the game ends immediately. And sure, you can kind of see that it's possibly coming, but it felt a little abrupt for a family game. Very minor quibble here. The building rules, what you can build, they have a really good diagram in the rules about this and on the back of the rules. I would have really liked to have seen that on a player aid that you could put on your, put by the side because you always have to like keep the rules open and keep it there because that tends to also be the most fiddly part of the rules. It's like, oh, I could build this and I can put this on top of it, but I can't put anything on top of this. The fields, but the buildings can kind of go on any of these 3 things. I see what they were trying to do. It kind of bloated the game a little bit. It could have been more streamlined, and they should have at least included a player aid for that. The market itself of the different cards can stagnate a bit, where, like in the last game I played, there just weren't a lot of green trees being drawn. So at one point, all the cards had green trees, but nobody was taking them because those weren't coming out. Of course, towards the end of the game, they came out like in bunches, but it got a little stagnant. Or sometimes if players have cards that they're happy with and they're really like working on these things, they're not going to be taking cards, and the market can stagnate a little bit. It's not a huge issue, but it can happen from time to time. Now, with all that being said, I enjoy the game. I don't typically talk about rating numbers because, quite honestly, people just look at numbers and they want to make... It doesn't matter what the number is, it's what I think of and the reasons why it got there. But people love numbers, and so I mentioned numbers. This thing has close to 1,000 ratings, it's at an 8.3. This game is fine. It's good. It's not a bad game. I'm going to give it about a 7. And it's getting a lot of hype, as I mentioned at the beginning of this. And so as reviewers, we're constantly trying to stay up on things, and when things happens, it's hard to not have expectations. I'm getting better at this in time. We're being like, hey, this thing's number 2 in the Hotness, it's been flying up, it's getting lots of ratings, great, I'll get it, but I'm not going to have too many high expectations because I know how things go. Typically, things that get hyped, most of the time, can't live up to it. In my opinion, this one is not living up to the hype. It's a good game. But there's other games that are similar to this that have come out, some long time ago, some very recently, that I feel are much better games that do similar things and give you similar feels. For example, a really excellent game from one of my favorite designers, Emerson Matsuuchi, many years ago came out with a game called Reef. And it is fantastic. And I wanted to compare it with this because people are comparing this to Azul and Cascadia. Very little people are talking about Reef, probably because not as many people have played that. I don't think this game's very much like Azul. Sure, you're drawing tiles and they're refilling and that's it. That's the only thing that's in common, and it doesn't even really feel like Azul, so you really shouldn't even count that. Cascadia, maybe a little bit. You're trying to make the river be really long, kind of like the salmon in Cascadia, but really it doesn't really feel like Cascadia either. It feels mostly like Reef, because you are building a grid in front of you. You're putting things on multiple levels, and you're trying to do it most efficiently. You're trying to score things, and certain things score at different levels and all that sort of thing. This game is most like Reef than all the other ones that it's being compared to. Reef, and because I wanted to have it fresh in my head, I played Reef right after my last play of Harmonies today, and Reef's just in another stratosphere. The game, Harmonies didn't grab me the way that like Reef does. Reef, there's something about it, how clean it is, the design, the way that everything's interconnected, the way you're doing similar things. I'm going to place a tile, I'm going to place it for now, but I'm also placing it for later. I'm thinking a few turns ahead. All these things, I can use it for multiple things. A lot of it is very similar, but for some reason, the way of using the card play in Reef, and whether you're getting a card or playing a card, or how you're setting yourself up for future turns, same things that you're thinking about in Harmonies, where it's like, oh, I'll grab these, I'll put this here, I'll put this over here for later, I'll use this. Similar things you're thinking, but for some reason, Harmonies does not grab me the way that Reef does. There's just something about it. And even, getting the points every turn as you're doing it versus waiting to the end feels better. But mainly, it just grabs you. The game is just, it feels like it's something special, where Harmonies is a good game. And that's the difference. And so you might be saying, you just like the Cult of the Old, you like just the older stuff. Well, okay. Well, there was a game that came out earlier this year that I'm on the rooftop screaming, this should be a Spiel des Jahres candidate. It's called Aqua, Biodiversity in the Oceans. This is a fantastic game that is not getting anywhere near the amount of ratings, the amount of love that Harmonies is getting, but I think also is better, much better. A game where you're building tiles. You're building your own tableau. You're drafting tiles from other people. You can kind of hate draft, kind of like you can in all these other games. But you're building your own thing. You're building 3 dimensions. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking multiple turns in a row. You're thinking of using this for this and this. Again, all of these games feel different enough that they're different games. But all of them also have a lot of similarities. And so, okay, an older game, Reef, I think is special and much better. Aqua, Biodiversity in Oceans, also grabs you. There's just so much more there to bite on, even though there are a lot of similarities. So there you have it. For me, the hype of this, I don't quite understand it. The game is good. If you come to me and you're like, hey, let's play Harmonies, great. I'd gladly play with you and I'll have a good time. But if you brought me those 3 games, Reef, Harmonies, and Aqua, Biodiversity in the Oceans, you said, hey, let's play one of these. Harmonies would be the last one I picked. And in fact, you'd probably play Reef twice and Aqua twice in a row because they're about the same length. And it's just one of those games that once you finish, you want to play it again. I don't know. Second on the Hotness, I get it. It's getting a lot of views. It's getting a lot of ratings. It's flying up the BGG charts. It's a good game. It's not a great game, I don't think. And I don't think it's as good as some of the other ones that it's closest to. So in my opinion, I have other games that do similar things to this that I feel like are special, where this doesn't feel as special. So it's not going to keep a spot in my collection, in my gaming library. So I hope this helps you put different things together. Again, it is a good game, don't get me wrong. I didn't dislike it, but it's just not that extra epsilon I would expect or hope a game with this going up this far on the hype and on the hotness to be. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and if you missed their 4.0 Kickstarter, you can still late pledge and take advantage of over 40 unlocked stretch goals and early fulfillment. This campaign featured a new Young Sherlock table, perfect for children's gaming, and movable coffee table, 10 new thematic mats by top artists like Vincent Dutray, a new designer art series Minecraft topper with thematic art from Brent Woodside, and some of the best package deals they've had, including game mat bundles. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below to late pledge now.